All right. Just turn on Facebook Live. All right, looks like we're live. Okay. Hey, everyone. Happy Sunday. Hope you're well. And I hope everyone is healthy and safe at home, wherever you are in the world today. And I want to thank you for joining me in this session here in our 35th live sacred space session. And I just wanted to say thank you for all your support through this incredible kind of run of a series. And today, this week, as always, I will start by saying I'm honored to be with you here in this time of sensitivity and uncertainty. And I look forward to sharing time with you in our shared sacred space together today. Let me just make sure our Facebook stream is working as well. Okay, it looks like Facebook's working. All right. So the things I want to do today in our time together is, as in every week, I'll start off by setting sacred space. And then we'll have our fairy tale kind of brainstorm topic. And today's topic will be the hide and seek nature of healing, which I'll talk a little bit more about once we get there. We'll maybe have a short exercise. We'll see what comes up, and then we'll close sacred space from there. Gary will be with us today as well. She selected the fairy tale, and she'll be telling the fairy tale for us again this week. So that's always a treat. Okay, so I'll go ahead and start the process of setting sacred space by saying that this is a space which we would like to create together, which is devoid of fear, threat, and control, in order for us to open to higher guidance on our life direction, on things going on from within our own selves, and higher guidance being however we define that within our own selves. It could be intuition, it could be relaxation and kind of visualizing how you want your life to be. It could be guidance from a higher power, from God, from the God of your religion. However we define it, just privately. And to do that in this safe sanctuary space where we all have the opportunity to relax and surrender with no fear or of any danger or threat to us, emotionally, socially, what have you, so that we can partake of the emotional nourishment and spiritual nourishment that comes from being in sacred space together as a group. Now, there's nothing wrong with profane. We're not saying profane is bad when we step into sacred space. It's just profane. It's a different kind of space. And there are certain things that you can only do when you are in sacred space. And that's what we seek to create here, so we can do those things. And in opening sacred space today, I am proposing that we all follow the 4 principles of Presidian sacred space. The first is confidentiality, standard Vegas rules. What happens in sacred space stays in sacred space. Now that is the rule for in-person sacred space, certainly. Here online, because it's a video, the video is open, the session is open to the public. The way we do confidentiality is through anonymization. So if you would like to chat or ask questions or interact anonymously, you don't have to, but if you would like to, you would come into the Crowdcast feed where you would register for free to get in. And then you would go to your edit profile feature in Crowdcast and then just change your username to Mickey Mouse or Harry Potter or whatever you like, and then proceed to participate anonymously. The second principle is that there is, in sacred space, no threat, no controlling, no fixing, no intervening for somebody else's good, no tough love, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with any of those things, right? But those are of the realm of control, so they are of the provenance of the profane. And that's fine, that's for the profane space. But in sacred space, it's a different kind of space, right? And what we do here is we don't do any of those things in order to hold space for each other, to be actually however we find ourselves to be in the moment, right? With no threat, with no controlling, no finger wagging, no fixing, no tough love, so that we can be however we are. So for instance, if we are afraid and anxious, we can continue to be afraid and anxious. We can be like that and be like that in a group without worrying that someone is going to come in and try to shush us and try to tell us to not be however we are. We can be afraid and anxious and feel incompetent about the fact that we are afraid. We can be happy and relaxed and feel wonderful that we are happy and relaxed. Or we can feel happy and relaxed and feel guilty that we feel happy and relaxed, right? And the point is, however you are, whether you're well put together or just a super hot mess, it doesn't matter. Because however you are, it is okay to be just like that. And the point of being in sacred space is that all of us together in a group mutually, and then also with ourselves, hold space for each of us to be however we happen to be, okay, with no fear, threat, or control. The third principle is a corollary to this one, which is no commerce. So nothing in sacred space may be sold or recommended or suggested. Even if it's free, even if it's well-meaning, it goes back to the fixing tough love thing. We are here in sacred space for your energy, not for the things you bring. We are here for what you are, not for what you do or provide. Okay. And the fourth is that there is no expectation of participation. It's another corollary of no fear, threat, or control. So there's no pressure to do anything. There's no, again, the nourishment from sacred space comes from the held space and your presence and attention from what you are, not from what you do or provide. So if you want to chat, you can. If you want to ask questions, you can. You don't have to. If you'd like to invite friends, you can. You don't have to. And then you can stay or go, come and go as you please, right? Some people say, well, I need to leave early. I'm sorry. Wonderful for you to say that. Thank you. But you don't have to. We are all here holding the space together. And the sort of energetic potluck, if you will, that we create is this shared resource, kind of an inexhaustible resource, really, during this time period, where each of us can come and go as we please, go like take care of the kids, answer a call, answer a text, whatever. That's perfectly fine. The space is here for you to partake of as you feel the need, right? So you don't have to like be on just to participate in sacred space either, because that's the point, okay? And so all of us here together will tend to amplify that. And so that is what I am proposing. And if you are not okay with that, that's okay. We will give you a moment now to withdraw from the group, and we will still catch up with you later in profane space and still hang out, no worries at all. In other words, there's no fear, threat, or control for you to even want to be in sacred space, because the point is that this is a space devoid of fear, threat, and control. So you can come and go as you please. So now I will take just a brief pause to allow everyone to make their choice as to whether they would like to proceed forward into sacred space or not. No pressure either way. Okay. Okay. And now for the rest of us, we will now move forward together into sacred space. And as we enter sacred space, I will just remind everyone that here we all will together observe the four principles of confidentiality and anonymization, no fear, threat, or control, no commerce, no recommendations, and no expectation of participation. Welcome to shared sacred space. Okay, so for this week, we have a topic which is the hide and seek nature of healing. And so in this session, we had Gary and I, my editor in Bangalore, had our call, weekly call to brainstorm what fairy tale we would do. We don't always do fairy tales. When you look at the replay list, it's only been the last month or two that we've been doing fairy tales. But we kind of hit this groove and we're just kind of rolling with it. And so the fairy tale she chose this week really unexpectedly brought us into a brainstorm kind of exploration of what is, and I use this word very sparingly, but it really is the best word. what is a description of a kind of more advanced aspect of the healing journey, to reveal like the deeper pattern of the healing journey. We talk about circumambulation and the labyrinthine nature of the healing journey and the journey of life, really. But there's also this kind of hide and seek nature of the physics of, well, of life overall, which is kind of a separate talk. But the healing journey itself has these elements of hide and seek, where things will come and appear to you, and then they will disappear. You'll look for them, you can't even find them, and then they'll reappear later, right? As part of this sort of larger pattern that we don't often see the underlying pattern, but we do see the behavior of the elements coming in and out in this hide and seek nature. So to explore this theme, what I want to do is I want to invite Gary on screen to tell us the story she has selected, and then we'll kind of take it from there.
Hi, Artie.
Hi, Gary. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Happy Sunday.
Hi. Happy Sunday. Yeah.
All right. Do you want to tell us about the story you've selected?
Yeah. I mean, so it's a fairy tale from a European tradition, and apparently it's kind of a story that occurs all across Europe in various themes and a bit of variation, but generally the overall structure is very, very identical with each of the version. So when I read this, I mean, I had the feeling that I've read this kind of motif many, many times in, say, Grimm's fairy tales or Russian folklore. There's a lot that I just want to address this. Okay, is it just you, Nina, or can everyone else hear me?
I can hear you okay.
Okay.
So if you can't hear, maybe try a refresh of your browser.
Yeah.
And just
Candace can hear me. Okay.
Okay, yeah, keep going. I'll put up a link for the Facebook Live too, in case anyone needs it.
Right. Okay. So I had this feeling that I've read this kind of story, this motif many, many times, and yet it was very different. And typically, like it happens every week, I just normally go with my gut, and if that story makes me very, very curious and very, very happy for some reason, I don't know why, I just go with that. So that was, in the Swan Maidens case, it was very, very happy, and I had no idea why. So I thought I'll explore that with you. Yeah.
All right, should we dive into the story?
Okay, yeah, I'll start with the story then.
I will get off camera.
Right. So the story basically starts with a hunter. So there was once this hunter who often spent the entire night in a forest, either stalking deer or hunting game, setting traps, and just basically on his hunting expeditions. And then there was one night when he was doing this as like his usual routine. He was sitting by a lake, but he was hiding behind bushes to wait to see if he could catch some wild ducks. And suddenly he heard like the sound of wings, and he thought, okay, so the ducks are coming. And he got his bow and arrow ready. And instead of ducks, he saw 7 maidens. And all of these maidens had robes made of feathers. And they looked like basically swans. And they got onto the bank of the lake, and they took off their robes and then plunged into the waters. And they basically come there to bathe and, play in the water. And they're all, stunningly beautiful, of course, but the youngest of them all, she was also the smallest. And she was the one who, pleased the hunter. And he kind of moved forward, he crept slowly. And at the opportunity that he got, he just seized her robe, the feathered robe that she had, and took it back with him into the bushes. So now, after the Swan Maidens had bathed, they came back to the bank and they started to put on their robes again. And the eldest, they were sisters probably, so the 6 elder sisters found their robes, they put them on again. The youngest one could not find hers. So she searched and they all searched with her. And this went on until dawn. And at this point, the sisters said, "We're very sorry, but we must leave. We must go. And it's dawn. And you, unfortunately, you have to just meet your fate, whatever it be." And saying that, they put on their robes and they flew away. And now the hunter, as soon as he saw them fly away and he found the maiden alone, he came forward with the feather robe in his hand. And when the maiden saw that, she begged and begged that she could have her robe back. But instead of giving her robe back, the hunter gave his own cloak, because he felt that if he gave her robe back, she would just fly away. So he gave his cloak, and then he made her promise to marry him. And then he took her home and hid her feather robe where, she didn't know where it was, so she wouldn't find it. And so they got married. They lived happily and had 2 very fine children, a 1 boy and 1 girl. And the children grew up, strong and beautiful and lovely. And the mother loved them. And one day, this little daughter was playing hide and seek with her brother. And she found this feathered robe, possibly when she was trying to hide. And this was a beautiful robe. So she took it to her mother and showed it to her. And of course, the Swan Maiden, as soon as she saw the robe, she put it on. And then she told her daughter, "Tell your father that if he wishes to see me again, he must find me in the land east of the sun and west of the moon." And saying that, she flew away. And so the hunter came next morning, and his daughter told him that this is what happened and this is the message that mother left for you. And so he set out to find his wife, and he needed to first find this land east of the sun and west of the moon. So he wandered and wandered for many days until he came across an old man who'd fallen down on the ground and possibly was a bit hurt. So he lifted him up, he helped him to sit down, he tended to him. And then the old man said, "Who are you and what are you doing here? Where are you going?" And he told the old man everything, about the Swan Maidens, about his wife, about how she left and how he has to find her. And he asked the old man, "Do you know where this land is?" And the old man said, "No, but I can ask." And he made a shrill whistle. And as soon as he whistled, the entire plain in front of them was filled with all the beasts of the world, because this old man was the king of the beasts. And he called out to all of them and said, "Does anyone here know where the land east of the sun and west of the moon is?" But the beasts didn't know. So then the old man turned to the hunter and said, "Well, you could go look for my brother, who's the king of the birds, and he could tell you." And he told him how to go look for his brother. And after a time, the hunter went to the king of the birds and asked him what he wanted. And the same thing happened again. The king of the birds summoned all the birds, and soon the entire sky was darkened, and all the birds came and gathered around them. And then he asked the same question, "Which of you knows where this land is?" And they didn't know. So then the king of the birds turned to the hunter and said, "Then you must ask my brother, the king of the fishes." And so the hunter went on, and he found the king of the fishes, and he told him what he wanted. And again, the king of the fishes summoned all the fishes of the sea and asked them, do you know where this land is? And they didn't know, but there was a dolphin that had come late, and it called out and said, I've heard that this land lies on top of the Crystal Mountain. And I don't know how to get to the Crystal Mountain, but I do know that it is near the wild forest. So this was good information. So the hunter thanked the king of the fishes, and he then went to the wild forest. Now, when he got near the forest, he found two men quarreling. And as he came near, they came to him, they came straight to the hunter and said, we're fighting over this. We would like you to settle our dispute. So the hunter then asked, okay, what is it? What are you fighting over? And the two men said, well, our father just died, and he's left two things for us. One is a cap, which when you wear it, no one can see you. And there's these shoes, which will take you through the air to whichever place you want to go to. Now, I'm the elder brother, so I claim the right of choice. And I want to decide which of the two I want to have. And my brother says, as he's the younger, he has the right to the shoes. Who do you think is right? So now the hunter thought, and he said, this is difficult to decide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set you a race. So from here to the tree, whoever gets back to me first, I will hand him whatever he wishes, either the shoes or the cap. So they thought, okay, this was a fair, contest. And then he took both the shoes and the cap and waited until they started the race. And as soon as they started running, he put on the shoes, put the invisible cap on his head, and he just took himself to the land east of the sun and west of the moon, because that's where he wanted to go. So on the journey, he flew because the shoes would take him through the air. So he flew and he flew and he flew. And he passed over 7 bends, and he passed over 7 glens, and he passed over 7 mountain moors, until finally he came to the Crystal Mountain. And on top of that, just like the dolphin had said, there was the land east of the sun and west of the moon. So now when he got there, he took off the cap, he took off the shoes, and he asked who ruled over this land. And he was told that there's a king who had 7 daughters who were dressed in swan's feathers. And so the moment he heard this, he knew this was where he wanted to be. So the king, the hunter came to the king and he said, I've come to seek my wife. So the king said, all right, who is your wife? And the hunter said, your youngest daughter. And then he told him the entire story of how he had won her and married her. And the king said, okay, now if you can tell her from her sisters, then I will know that what you're saying is true. So he called all of his 7 daughters, and when they were all there, and they all looked identical, they had the same dresses and they looked exactly like they were identical. So the king said, do you know which of these is your wife? And then the hunter said, if I may, I'd like to take each of them by the hand so that I will surely know which is my wife. And then there comes this part when he took the hand of his wife, the youngest one. Because she had sewn the dresses of her children, her right hand, the forefinger of her right hand, had marks of the needle on them. And that's how he knew that this was his wife. And he claimed her and he told the king. And then the king gave them lots of gifts and sent them down, like a shorter way down the Crystal Mountain, sent them back home. And they went back home and they lived happily ever after. So that's the story. Artie, are you there?
All right. Yay.
Okay.
I love that. I love that even more the second time around.
Oh, great. Okay.
Thank you for telling that story. And let me start by asking, where did you enter that story? What part really called to you the most?
Well, the most obvious motif for me that kind of resonated with me was the feathered robe and the swans, right? Swans, because I had this recent memory of you talking about, I think last week or before that, of how swans are considered sacred in every culture, and it's kind of almost, you don't kill a swan, you don't eat a swan. So we have this motif of this hunter who really came there to kill a duck, and then he finds swans, and then, you know, he holds back. And instead of killing, obviously, he marries a swan maiden, right? So there was that thing which resonated strongly because of the recent discussion we'd had on that. And there was also this element that, you know, from the Russian folktale of Vasilisa, where the masculine, the husband who married Vasilisa, had to go and find her when accidentally he loses her robe. I mean, I don't want to kind of elaborate more on that.
Accidentally.
Yeah. So when, you know, because of the robe, he ends up losing her, and then he has to find her again. So there is a very similar motif and pattern in the story as well. So it was familiar in many aspects, but also strangely different. So that's why I was curious. But more than that, it just felt so good to read the story.
Why do you think that is?
Part of the reason probably also is, and I don't know if that's the case, but I have read these kind of stories, fairy tales in my childhood. And there were many, many stories which had this motif of finding lands beyond the 7 seas and beyond the 7 mountains. And there was that whole motif of 7 things that you had to cross to find the treasure and then come back with it. There is a sense of, I can't say if it's accomplishment, but a sense of wholeness that you feel once you've read the whole thing. That you go that far beyond 7, hurdles, if I can call it that, and then you come back and you have a treasure back with you. So, and it usually is the princess, right? It's usually you come back with a princess. So there was somehow that feel good thing. I don't know if it was from my associations from childhood stories or there is something about that motif that just feels good.
I mean, 7 also is, when you see the number 7 in dreams, it is the symbol of perfection, right? So 3 is the number of completion. 9 is kind of the sacred, more kind of beyond this realm number. And 7 is like complete perfection, like here. You have completed the thing you're supposed to do.
Right.
And here he goes beyond, the 7 realms, all these 7s to like get to this next level. The whole story is extraordinary on a number of different ways. To me, this is a story of the integration of inner masculine and inner feminine.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are this may be your first LSS that you're joining, Live Sacred Space, the way we read these fairy tales is to read them as we would read dreams when we do healing practice. The way we do that is basically we regard, the main thing is that we regard every major actor in the dream or fairy tale as a symbol of a distinct and separate part of your own inner world. Right, so the swans are a part of you. The prince obviously is a part of you. The hunter, the brothers, the cap, the shoes, the father, the king, etc., etc. And then the way you read this dream is you hit the play button, you watch the sort of skit or video unfold, and you look out for who's doing what to whom and read the symbol from that perspective. And so this is a story, of course, of like inner masculine, inner feminine integration. Right? We all have inner masculine and inner feminine kind of strands within us, regardless of our biological external gender. And these strands are, they are separate and distinct, but they give rise to each other. Right? It's like two sides of a coin. Right? They are separate and distinct, but you can't really have one without the other. And they long over the arc of lifetime. They long for integration. They long for reunion and marriage, right? Symbolically. And so there are these two sort of elements within you that are constantly circling around each other and longing for like fitting together in the right way, right? And a lot of fairy tales are kind of the stories, the kind of case studies, if you will, of different ways the inner masculine, inner feminine come together in the right way, in the wrong way, right? Sort of the false bride, the false husband, trying to sort of attain a marriage by force, right? And then, the non-tragic fairy tales end with the inner masculine and inner feminine, again, within you, coming together and, living happily ever after, right? Where they are fruitful and they multiply. And again, this is for the inner masculine, inner feminine within you. So we're not talking about biological children, literally, necessarily, but it's more when these elements within you integrate, then you have procreativity, you have creativity, you have productivity in your life. You start, your wounds heal and you start looking to find and follow and fulfill your bliss in life, your meaning and purpose in life. So it's this like up leveling of the quality of your life overall, right? And now this story then, so that's your classical, Frog and the Princess and other stories like Hansel and Gretel that we've talked about, where there's a masculine and a feminine and they work together.
Yeah.
This particular story really struck me because right from the get-go, the overall story is that this guy does everything perfectly from beginning to end.
Yeah.
Like all the sort of things we've talked about in the past 2 months of fairy tales, he like hits the mark perfectly, pitch perfectly at every step of the way. And the question is, why is that, right? And the first clue to me, like the core of this story, is that in the beginning of the story, this hunter, we as the scene opens, we find him in the dark forest at night, hunting ducks. And this is an extraordinary opening scene. It's a question of being literate in the sort of symbolic language, mythopoetic language of these stories. But basically, the dark forest is a symbol of the vast unexplored areas of your own inner self, right? The dark forest is a symbol of a part of you. And so he's in the dark forest, not just during the day, but also specifically at night, which is like the chthonic realm, the time when dreams come, when scary things are roaming around the forest that aren't roaming around during the day. Hey, Gary, I think your microphone's still on. You want to check that? And basically, the fact that he is in the dark forest at night speaks to the fact that this inner masculine is at a very advanced level. It's a very, very advanced state. Right? Because typically the dark forest is the place where everyone fears to go, right? It's like, oh, you can't go in there. Nobody comes back who goes into that forest. All of these sort of, stay in the village, don't go beyond the pale, don't be too ambitious and cross the ambit, right, of your potential and into the dark unknown forest. And in most stories, the journey starts off with a problem. Like the hero is childless, there is famine, there's some lack, and you are either, chased out of the village into the forest by, an angry mob because you've done something wrong, right? Or you're like thrust into the forest because there's a famine and you're looking for food or something else, right? Even though it's scary, you force yourself at the end of a spear to go deeper into the forest. Here, though, the hunter doesn't go into the forest through force or fear. There's no fear, threat, or control pushing him into the forest, or because he's trying to find a wife, or because he has a problem, or because he's feminine. He's perfectly comfortable, and there's no problem. Right? He's not even going into the forest because he was drinking at a bar and somebody dared him. He just goes in to do his hunting, right? And like, who hunts ducks at night, right? No one. So it's a very specific symbol. He goes into the forest, right, where others fear to even think about. And he goes in very comfortably, without fear, at night. And not even as a one-off. He's going in for his regular nourishment. He's going in to hunt ducks. And ducks, of course, are the access to all three realms. Ducks, waterfowl, swan, which is like the royal version of duck, are a symbol of this part of you, right? And it symbolizes the part of you that is of the spirit, because bird is of the spirit realm. But the spirit which can access the spirit realm, the air, the regular realm, the ground, and then also the underwater realm, which is the emotional, embodied, soulful, typically in opposition to spirit. Its spirit is up, soul is down. But the duck part of you can freely access all three. So the hunter inner masculine is going into the chthonic, the dark, unexplored areas of the inner self, comfortably, without fear, without being forced, and on a regular basis. This is like his weekly duck hunting run, in order to take in the nourishment of the part of him, right, the duck, that is able to access all three realms. So this is an extraordinary image, right? So right off the bat, we know this is an extraordinary level of the inner masculine. You don't get to this level until you've done enough circumambulation and healing and grieving and all of this stuff to be comfortable with the inner forest, to not only go regularly, willingly, but to also know why you're going, right? Like never wash, right? The last week's story. Most people would be like, I don't even want that deal. I don't want to be, in the cave, in the hole of grief for 15 years. Even if people who go in, half of them would tap out. Like they'd be like, I'm out after a month or a year. And even people who have gone through the full 15 years would be like, phew, I'm glad that's over. I never want to do that again, right? And here, this never washed state, which is going into the dark forest, happens on a regular basis. And he does it willingly. He does it enthusiastically, to go in and take a very specific kind of nourishment. It's like willingly hanging out in the dungeon. It's just insane. It's very uncomfortable, but he does it. So I wanted to spend a little more time on that, because that is almost the crux of the story right there. I'll go through the rest of the story, but basically, because he starts at this level of comfort with the dark forest at night, this is the thing where he's teed up perfectly as he is to basically play the rest of the round with perfect tens all across the board. Right? That's kind of how I'm reading the story. So what happens then when you're at this kind of level? And if you're asking yourself, how do I get to this level? It is all the things we've been talking about before: grief, embodiment, not being afraid of these darker parts of your own inner self, which have pain. Okay. So the main unusual thing that happens once he's in the forest is that he goes in to find ducks, and he finds instead swans, right? The royal, even higher divine being that's beyond you. He goes in looking for the nourishment of ducks, which is already very advanced. And through grace, right, swans come to him. Swans come to him. And swans, as Gary had mentioned, are this sort of ultimate divine being. In Hindu, right, Paramahamsa, right? Parama is, the highest Hamsa is swan. And Paramahamsa is like a sort of nickname, an epithet for like the divine, highest sort of realized guru. So the swans are feminine, They symbolize perfection because they are 7. And they are literally of the 3 realms. They come down, they take off their robes, and they dive into the water. So they're demonstrating the fact that they have access to all 3 realms. And he pursues and marries the last of the 7. Now, any other guy who would not be at his level would have been too cheeky or too hubristic and would have messed up royally. Okay, but he is able to thread the needle exactly. Any lesser inner masculine might have burned the robe or locked her up, but he does it just perfectly. He presses his case. He is honorable. He doesn't leave her unprotected. He gives her his robe in exchange, right? So she does have the protection of his embodiment, because clothes are a symbol of embodiment. So he's trying to basically exchange embodiment with her, i.e. marry, integrate with the inner feminine symbolically. So he doesn't leave her unprotected. He does protect her, but he says, will you please take my protection, right? And I will take your sort of spirit power. And she agrees. Now, of course, she's all powerful. She could have whipped out her cell phone, called her dad, and rained down lightning bolts on him. The other Swan Maidens could have beaten him up. She could have just gotten another robe, any of these things. But she goes along with it. She exchanges embodiment. He marries her, and this marriage is a good one symbolically. This is a diorama of the elements within you, right? This is not a sort of story about recommending real life men going out and stealing the clothes of real life women. It's all symbolic within you, inner masculine, inner feminine. And that this is a good marriage in symbolic terms, because mythopoetically it's fruitful. They have 2 kids. So they have an emerging masculine and an emerging feminine. Everything's fine. Then they play hide and seek, right? All of this story is hide and seek. The inner masculine and inner feminine are already within you. And even after they integrate, you're done. But then you have this hide and seek of 2 kids coming out. So the inner feminine and inner masculine reemerge as the emerging form. And then they all play hide and seek, which is this very kind of beautiful, very elegant symbol of the meta of what's going on in the story and in our lives. So you have this perfect quaternity, 2 males, 2 females, 2 masculines, 2 feminines, 2 existing, 2 emerging. And the symbol of their harmony is this dance that is in the specific form of hide and seek. To use our language, it's a form of they're circumambulating, they're hiding, seeking, and they're moving through the labyrinth together. Okay. Why is the game hide and seek? The reason the game is hide and seek at the children's level, at the myth level, at the life level, is that the whole point of the entire affair is to make you look, is to provoke you into exercising your vision. It's to make you seek, right? And when the children play it, they willingly step into a labyrinth. They know what it is, and they willingly step in. And it is this act of surrender and release, not of achievement, right? Because we're sitting around and we say, let's play hide and seek. It's like, I've already achieved the point of the game nominally, because we're sitting around, I've already found you, I'm looking right at you. And then we mutually agree to play hide and seek, where you or I will actively make the effort to go away in order for you to then come and find me again, right? So we come back to the place where we were sitting here in the living room looking at each other, right? But we choose to do that in order to circumambulate. And there's something about the act of circumambulation that is intrinsically nourishing, this act of play. It's just like the way dance itself is intrinsically nourishing, right? The point of dance is not to get from point A on the dance floor to point B on the dance floor as quickly as possible. That's not a dance, that's a foot race, right? The point of dance is that you end up wherever, but the movement itself is the point of it, the circumambulation. So it is through this game of hide and seek that the child, the girl, finds the robe. Theseus and the Minotaur, Ariadne, is the motif of hide and seek. Going into the forest at night when you're terrified is the motif of hide and seek. So she finds the feather robe because they are in this advanced form of willingly advanced form of hide and seek. So because you do that, the inner feminine, the Gretel level, like the daughter level of the inner feminine, recovers the spirit power, the feather robe of the mother. Okay, things you find things in hide and seek that you weren't even looking for. Just like the hunter in the opening scene of The Thing. He wasn't looking for swans. He was in there hunting ducks. He knows what he's doing. Everything's fine. And then this upside comes to him from the grace of heaven, literally from the sky. So the girl is playing hide and seek, just playing with mom and dad and her brother. And she stumbles upon this robe, just like the hunter stumbled upon the Swan Maiden. She brings it to her mother. And the mother basically says, okay, now I'm going to take this and now I'm going to go hide and I'm going to go away. And so the key here to healing that the story speaks to me about is that we go into healing not to forcibly control and fix a particular situation. That's not healing, that's curing, as we said last week. That's curing. Okay. When we go into healing, we're basically going to a place, ideally, that is uncomfortable for us, kind of for no good reason, right? And we're surrendering to it and then letting grace, if you will, take over. In other words, when people come to me for healing, right, asking for help, figuring out their lives, figuring out how to overcome, a wound that they've sustained, all I say, well, I have a bunch of these, tools here for insight and reflection. And when they use them, right, they kind of don't know where they're going. I don't know where they're going. I'm just like, here are tools that I've used that have been helpful for other people. And they end up finding things that they weren't looking for. They end up finding these swan robes that they weren't originally looking for. And you would have never found it if you didn't just kind of surrender to this motif of hide and seek in the first place. And they find these things that they weren't looking for and somehow use them to heal themselves in this circumambulatory, non-linear, non-controllable, non-predictable way. In a way where I certainly cannot take credit for it. They say, oh my gosh, you did this great thing. And it's like, I didn't do anything. I just let you borrow my toolbox. Right? You're the one who did it. Right? Everyone, when they heal themselves. I call myself a healer just as a sort of convenience of language. And when people do ask, well, this has worked for all these other people, how do I know it will work for me? And my answer is, I have no idea if it will work for you. But let me show you what I got. Let's play hide and seek. Let me show you what I got. And the beautiful nature of this hide and seek is that in other fairy tales, when the maiden, he burns her skin, trying to keep her in this maiden form, she leaves in almost a punitive way. Here, at this advanced level, she still leaves. He still loses the princess, right? But she doesn't leave in a punishing way. She's like, all right, good job, dear. She takes the robe and she's like, now I'm going to go away. And the point here is that when she goes away, he doesn't go into grief. The kids don't show any signs of grief or bereavement. And the unspoken thing is that at this level, they know she'll be back. They know she'll be back. This is the next round. This is round 3 of hide and seek. Round 1 was the hunter in the forest. Round 2 is the kids. And round 3 is the mother leaving. Right? This is simply round 3 of this advanced hide and seek. This marriage with the Swan Princess is kind of like getting a taste of enlightenment right up front. And then you lose it, not because you did anything wrong, but because you continued in this surrender. Like when you're playing hide and seek, it's like hanging out in the dark forest. You continued to hang out in the dark forest. Whereas a more profane sensibility would be like, well, just come out and quit while you're ahead. Why are you still in there? And the reason, of course, you stay in the dark forest, you stay in these darker parts of your own inner self, whether you even have grief or not, right? Because at some point you ask yourself, well, am I done grieving? And you realize after a certain level, it doesn't really matter if you're done healing or done grieving, right? Because in the healing motifs we use, it's like, so why do you even care if you're done grieving or done healing? If I told you you were done healing, right? I did some like blood finger stick test and said, oh yeah, you're done healing. Does that mean you would stop hanging out with your lost board member? Right? Of course not. Of course not. Right? If I said you were done being a parent, does that mean you would stop wanting to like spend time with your children, even though they're 30 and you're like 60 or 70? Of course not. Of course not. Right? So at this next level, you spend time in the forest because you love to. The family is playing hide and seek because it's fun. And because of that hide and seek, right, then you lose the swan princess again. And you spend a lot of time trying to get back to it, but then once you get back to it, you realize once again you never lost it. You play this hide and seek, right, to realize, in a sense, that the thing was always with you. That the thing was always with you. It's like when we talk about sacred and profane. When we say, oh, you know, we want to do more sacred space because the modern world is 99% profane and 1% sacred. We're not talking about the hard chemical composition of sacred and profane within you, right? We're talking about the choice, conditioned, taught choice of how much time we spend in each realm. I guess what I'm saying is you always have 1,000% sacred within you already. The forest is in you. It's a part of you. And when we say 1% sacred, we just mean you only spend 1% of your time in the forest or thinking about the forest. But the vastness of the forest is always there. It's simply a question of attention and what you are comfortable doing. So the power is always there within you. Or when we talk about the phases of the moon, right? When it's a crescent moon, right? And the moon is like this sliver, the whole moon's actually there. It's just being covered. It's just, so when we say 1% sacred, the whole moon of the sacred is there. It's just you're only giving it a sliver of your attention. And then eventually through hide and seek and circumambulation, it will come back to its full phase again. And then it will like go back and forth forever. And that's a feature, according to stories like this, that's a feature, not a flaw. So now then, in round 3, ding, 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 circumambulation, he goes on a wild swan chase, a wild goose chase, through the same 3 realms of the waterfowl, of the duck and of the swan. He goes through the earth realm, the realm of the beasts. He goes to the sky realm, the realm of the birds. And then he goes to the sea realm, the realm of the fishes, right? This is the exact echoing of the 3 realms that can be accessed by the duck and the swan, this Paramahamsa, this Hamsa, swan part of you. He then shows that he is also a swan, because in his search for the princess swan, he goes through all 3 realms as well, and he has full access to them. And you notice some of the motifs we talked about in past sessions. The way he navigates these 3 realms, right, is very telling, because we know this is an advanced guy. So we watch carefully for how he does things. And then hopefully we try to sort of follow his example, right? And the way he navigates the 3 realms is not to be helpless. Oh, I'm a helpless child. I'm an infant. I can't do anything. Please, father of the beasts, father of the fishes, help me. He doesn't do that. But he's also not a jerk. He's not going through as a conqueror with drawn sword, like conquering the fishes and the birds, right? And he also doesn't run away. He's not like depressed, sitting in his hut, you know, drinking his life away because the princess left him. But he goes out in search for her, not as helpless, not as a jerk, but to stand in good faith with each of the monarchs of the 3 realms. And he makes his good faith request. In some cases, he, you know, makes a deal. He helps the old man first without even knowing who he is. And then the old man says, well, I'm going to help you because you're intrinsically such a good guy, right? And this idea of moving through the 3 realms, right? You have this realization that he knows how to do this because he's already comfortable in the forest, dark, scary at night forest realm, right? He's not just some hunter going after squirrels. He goes after ducks at night, which is a very rare thing, right? In the dark forest regularly, right? So there's a sense of him having this feeling of like, I am a human, right? I have a right to be here, and I'm here for a reason. I'm basically mortal, but you have sovereignty, and you have the power to deal with other agents in the kingdom of the world, in good faith, right? So he made a deal to get his wife initially. He helped the king of the beasts, and then asked for what he wanted. He went in good faith also to the king of swans, who could have easily imprisoned him or like struck him down with a bolt of lightning. He went there in good faith as well. He didn't dissemble. He didn't cheat. He didn't sneak in through the back door of the kingdom. He went right into the king of swans. And he said, I'm looking for my wife. And he's like, who is your wife? It's like your youngest daughter. So he could have been imprisoned, for any of this. And he just goes through all 3 realms, 4 or 5 realms, in good faith, with solid, I guess it's a sense of self-esteem and self-awareness, right? Whereas humans, we're mortal, right? And when we don't have a good sense of like where we stand in the universe and ourselves, we kind of whipsaw in this kind of almost bipolar kind of, extremes of, 1 minute we're like the dominating force of all the world, like sort of raping the environment and using animals and all the rest of it. And on the other extreme, we're like, this sniveling slave praying to God saying, please give us our daily bread. And it's this sense of like, because we don't have this balanced sense of just kind of, balanced, well-rounded self-esteem, that we kind of like go through these extremes of like, being this tyrant destroying the world, alternating with this weakling saying, I'm helpless. Everyone's persecuting me. I take no responsibility. It's not my fault. And yet I'm angry that like, people are not changing my diaper, right? So he's not like this. He's able to move through all the different realms, not as more than he is, but also not as less than he is, which is, it's a very advanced way of being. It's a very advanced way of being. Now, the only time he did a kind of swindle, was in the forest with the 2 men. And this is like the one exception to everything I just said, where he, is he not acting in good faith with these 2 men when he like sends them on the race to the tree and then he runs off with the cap and the shoes? The way I read this is that we've said before that when you have a pair, a duo, it's typically a crossroads choice, right? So the 2 brothers represent this crossroads choice, one or the other. And they present to him, you have to make the crossroads choice. Who gets to go first? Who gets to choose first? The older brother or the younger brother? And in this case, he creates a 3rd choice and takes both. And in a sense, because he is that advanced. And why is he advanced? In this case, he chooses not to engage with the 2 brothers directly, because there is something about the 2 brothers that is out of order, that is messed up, where basically the father should have set out who gets what. And that was the first failure. And the second failure was the 2 brothers should have just figured it out amongst themselves. But, given the state of the father, you would imagine that the sons are like messed up as well. So they are not able to decide, and they're quarreling, with the result that the superpowers of the cap and the shoes goes wasted and unused, right? This is the loss when things are not set up properly. And so there is this feeling of, if things are out of order, right, you will lose power, right? And the other way of expressing the same idea is that, with the state of affairs in this way, even if they had the cap and the shoes, what would they even do with them, right? They wouldn't even know what to do with that kind of power, because they don't have like the proper vision. So, so this higher inner masculine is able to see this 3rd way, right? Which is, I'm going to send you off on this, your own mini wild goose chase, and I'm going to take the power, right? Because you guys don't know what to do with it anymore. Maybe I'll come back later and give it back to you, right? It's not included in the story, but he could easily do that. It's not like it's a consumable that you use it and it doesn't work anymore. But basically moving in and saying, I'm going to take the powers of my own inner realm, because the two guys are you. The hunter is you. The cap and shoes are powers within you as well. So basically, and if this were Hansel and Gretel, right, and the father of Hansel and Gretel, which we've talked about, the sort of inept inner masculine, had gone into the forest, he similarly would have been mugged as well, right, because he's not at this sort of higher level of power. So this higher level of inner masculine power takes these resources and powers that are being unused, wasted, quarreled over endlessly, almost takes them out of non-productive circumambulation and helps the overall high level move forward. Okay. So then after that, the point then is doing this, making this almost command decision within your own self is the only way to get to these realms, the 7 mountains, the 7 glens, the 7 seas, all these realms of perfection. Transcending in the final step of the journey is really the only way, right? Because when you're like, okay, so he stole them, haha, and then the story describes all the realms he's transcending, and you're like, whoa, this is like, if he hadn't done that, we would be here till next year telling the story of how he goes through all these realms, right? This is a sense of you can't get to that last level unless you make this like third choice decision with the quarreling. In other words, it's not, in a lot of the principles we use in talking about healing and bliss, we talk about sort of binary versus like transcending. We talk about, what is a good example? Linear versus holistic, right? This or that, sort of an either or black and white choice versus this kind of third choice, this transcending choice. And here he's moving on in the direction of the transcending choice. Even sacred and profane is like this. Profane is like, it's right or wrong, it's black and white, it's fear or, sort of, you have to do this or else. It's always conditional, right? And then sacred says all of that's out the window. You're just in the state of surrender, right? And the profane is mortified at this. It's like, what do you mean state of surrender? You're going to get mugged. You're going to get cheated by the goat vendor in the marketplace. And the sacred says, yeah. And that's it. Yeah, that's how we're going to do it. And somehow that's how you get across these 7 realms, the 7 mountains, the 7 glens, the 7 seas. So anyway, with all that, he gets to the Crystal Mountain, all in good faith. He goes to the father-in-law, tells the whole story. The king loves it, doesn't punish him. He could have easily incinerated him, but instead he sets him in a test. And the test is, right, how do you tell these seemingly identical, spiritual, abstract, rarefied things of the 7 daughters? And they're all identical, right? How do you know which is the real, like, yours, right? How do you know which one is the true match? How do you make this transcendent realm, right, of like, oh, the crystal kingdom and everything? How do you bring it down to the level where it is actually yours and specifically yours and not just an abstract? How do you bring it from spirit down into body is another way of saying it. And symbolically, the question is, okay, well, if you can find your wife among the 7 daughters and pick the right one, then I'll know you're the right husband and you can have her back. And the answer, once again, the solution to the problem at this rarefied, at the end of everything, this round 3 of hide and seek circumambulation at the ultimate, is through the markings on her finger, which she got by making clothes for the children. In other words, from a couple sessions ago, what is the symbol of, first of all, it's the markings on the finger that comes from making clothes. And what did we say the symbolism of making clothes is? Tailoring, right? The symbolism is embodiment. So the trick is embodiment. The answer to knowing, to bringing spirit down to specifically yours is embodiment. The way you know, the way you make the spiritual specific to your life is through embodiment. It's not an interesting intellectual exercise. It's something you actually feel in your body, and then you make it yours. When you hold your partner, right? If it's the right partner, it feels a certain way that it doesn't feel with anyone else. It's just something you know. Okay, something you feel, rather, something you feel. So then, the princess here is not yours because you bargained with her and were like sort of very clever in an intellectual way. She is yours because she had children with you. You affected embodiment with her. In the Christian tradition, of course, it's like God becomes human in the form of Jesus. He becomes embodied, and that's what makes the difference, which is a poignant point because this was the trick for this inner masculine. But this inner masculine, right from the beginning of the story, was already super advanced, right? This masculine was not like the dopey beginner. This inner masculine is already at a very rarefied. He's already traveled through realms and oceans of grief to even get to the point where his regular weekly thing is to go into the dark, scary forest at night hunting ducks, right? So this is already like sort of world-class, masterclass dude. And for him to cross his round 3 of circumambulation, even for him, it's embodiment. Even for him, it's embodiment. Okay. For him, you don't go into the forest to seek anything. You're already good. You're already comfortable. Right? You go into the forest for no good reason because you want to. In other words, you go in and sit with these deep, dark parts of you. Not because you need to, not because you want to, but because you desire to. And all this wild goose chase, wild swan chase, he willingly does it. And at the ultimate level, to reclaim something he already had. Right? And even if he didn't have her, at the beginning of the story, he didn't have her. The story didn't say, well, he was looking for a wife. He was very sad. He was fine. He was just hunting ducks. And he still does this circumambulation and embodiment. In other words, even at this rarefied level, circumambulation matters, embodiment matters, bargaining in good faith matters, which is kind of, the opposite of New Age spirituality or modern spirituality, right? Where and this is kind of an art. I mean, New Age spirituality has all these artifacts of Christian, Protestant Christianity, where, it's like you will only get to enlightenment if you're good. This conditional kind of thing, right? And if you're good, and if you do all this stuff, the body won't matter, right? You'll float away in enlightenment on this like cloud of purple jello, right? The rules of the physical world won't matter. And this is kind of a holdover from Protestantism, right? Where it's like the love of God is conditional. It's only if you're good, otherwise you'll burn in hell, which, right, makes no sense. I mean, even the love of a human parent is unconditional for their child, and you're going to tell me the love of God is all of a sudden conditional, right? So that's number one. And number two, the great release from the conditional love of God, if you are a good Christian or any religion, right? That's conditional like this. And you make it through the pearly gates of heaven. The big somehow sort of reward is that you are disembodied. You're an angel flying around, you're free of all the pain. But what they don't tell you in the brochure is that you're free of all the pleasure as well. I mean, children understand this like instinctively. You send them to church and they're listening and they're talking all about like this floaty stuff around where you escape sort of the burdens of this life, and the children's like, oh, right, all they want to do is go out and play in the dirt. But then that's trained out of them. So the point here is that even when you get to the Paramahamsa level, you're still navigating through the physical world, and you still manifest your bliss and integrate with inner feminine through embodiment and circumambulation. He still goes on a wild goose chase. He still does 3 rounds of hide and seek because he desires it, because it's fun, right? This is not punishment, right? This is beautiful. And the sense is almost that like only the dunderheads try to escape all this because they see it as punishment when it really actually isn't. But anyway, there's more to say, but let me call Gary back up and get her sort of roped into this conversation as well.
Hi, Artie. That was cool. This time it was me making notes.
Now you're making notes. Okay, good. What are you thinking? What are you thinking?
Strangely, this didn't occur to me before, but as you were talking about the 2 brothers fighting, and how the hunter kind of tricks them out of that game, I was reminded of how Alice in Wonderland meets Tweedledum and Tweedledee. And it kind of the nursery rhyme that goes, Tweedledum and Tweedledee agreed to have a battle. So that's that kind of fun thing that came to me. And what I was thinking about that is how easy it is, and considering these 2 brothers had these amazingly magical things left to them by their father. Having a fight and who gets to choose what and who gets to keep what. And that reminded me of the distracting questions we tend to get lost in. And the kind of being stuck in a circumambulatory path where you don't ask the right questions. And you kind of tend to lose way because you ask the wrong questions. And the things like, who's entitled to what? Why should I get to keep this? Why should they get to keep that? And instead of saying, okay, I have these amazing things, now how do I use them to get to where I want to go? And it's amazing that the hunter asks the right questions to himself, and he gets to keep the magical things. So it's not even about entitlement. It's about, finding the secret key, which is asking the right question of what to do with those things and how to get to where you want. Which I thought was, when you said, you didn't want to be stuck in a place where you're constantly battling between these 2 choices. The question is, are these 2 choices really even the right questions? So what's the question to ask out and beyond those 2 things?
Well, see, the thing for me there is, it's making me kind of feel that even at the 2 brothers level, it's fine to say, oh, they're asking the wrong questions and they're quarreling when they shouldn't have to quarrel.
Yeah.
But even when you ask the wrong questions and you do the dumb thing and you quarrel within your own self, that too is circumambulation. That too is a valid form of hide and seek.
Yeah. Because those brothers have been there.
What's that?
Because those brothers have been there doing that all along until they find the hunter, so that they have been on their journey as well. So that's
right. But this is a part of you. There's a part of you that like will always do this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like an archetype doesn't develop.
Right.
So if you have an archetype of quarreling brothers, it is always within you. Yeah. And then you basically move to another point, and then you come back to it later.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, so if I go to Paris and I visit the Eiffel Tower and I leave, the Eiffel Tower doesn't disappear.
Right.
It's still there, and I can come back to it later. The archetype doesn't develop. The archetype is kind of static because it's aesthetic arrest. It's static. Right. It never changes. When you're like, oh, when will my inner child ever grow up? It's like, it won't. It's the archetype of inner child, and you have an archetype of parent as well. You have the archetype of sacred and the archetype of profane, and you choose what percentage you stay in each one. So for here, it's like the quarreling is another form. It's like it's round 2.5 of hide and seek.
Right.
Right. Even in the Tweedledum Tweedledee, like you said in the quote in Alice in Wonderland, the quote is, "They agreed to have a battle."
Yeah.
It's not that I poked you and then you're like, you slap me back. It's like we're standing around and we say, let's play hide and seek. What do you say? Okay, tag, you're it, and then I run, right? It's like they agreed to have a battle.
Yeah.
So there's this archetype of like agreeing to do this like seemingly stupid thing for a while. And the meta is that it's circumambulation, it's okay. But in the micro, when you zoom in, you're like gnashing your teeth and I'm like, I'm so incompetent and I'll never, attain spirituality. And my buddy Joe over there, he attained spirituality and wrote about it on his blog, and I'm such a dunderhead and blah, blah, blah. And that's how it feels. That's okay. That's normal.
That was like the most powerful thing for me in the story, that when you came to the part where you said, well, it's everything, even circumambulation, life, everything is just hide and seek. And it's so powerful to have that perspective, that instantly, just when you start looking at everything as hide and seek, you're in a journey, you're healing, your bliss, finding your life path, your purpose, and becoming a better person, or whatever it is that you're seeking. Everything is hide and seek. There's an instant infusion of the sacred. You know that you are not in control, and also, everything is you in that way, right? So you're playing hide and seek. You've not lost anything, but you are out to seek something.
Yeah. Which you basically already have.
You basically already have. I mean, it's not just because you're seeking doesn't mean you don't have it, which is a lovely contradiction. It's how, like in Alice in Wonderland, everything is just so confusing, contradictory, and the same thing at the same time, right? So like you have it, but you're still seeking it. And it's
as an uncle, watching the kids, you play hide and seek just to make them all hide, and you get like, 2 minutes of peace and quiet. It's like, I want to lose them, at least for a little bit.
Right.
Like, are you coming to find us or not? Yeah, I'm coming. I'm giving you extra time. He's like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just so wonderful to know that, because sometimes on your journey you feel like this is a constant seeking and never finding is okay, because it just means it's a very, very, very long game, right? And you kind of feel like it's never finding, but it's all right. And like I said, it's like a sudden infusion of the sacred the moment you realize that that's what it is, and that's the lens to look through.
Why is that?
Because it's not about control, right? It's you no longer need to feel in control, because if you are playing a game of hide and seek, you are seeking, and the sense of mystery of not finding is the fun part, right? And when you find something, it's not, like you said, the whole prestige of achievement, accomplishment. It's none of that. It's just pure, again, fun. Because, even pets, even dogs understand the game of hide and seek. And you do that, you hide from them, and you suddenly kind of show yourself. And it's just that pure joy on their faces of finding you after you were hiding.
Yeah. Or it's like, you really want me to throw this tennis ball again? I can just give it to you. You want me to throw it again? All right, okay.
So it's just fun, right? I mean, the finding is fun. It's not about accomplishment. It's not about getting somewhere. And that therefore is not about control, not about, prestige and all those kinds of status and getting somewhere, rather than, where I am, I'm fine. even though I'm seeking. Again, it's that lovely contradiction. So I feel like there is this sudden feeling of how sacred feels while you're in it. That everything, the world just goes on the way it goes on. But when you're in the sacred, just this perspective that it's hide and seek and not a race to be somewhere else.
I mean, even this kind of contraction and expansion of moving from the profane to the sacred and back again, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is this feeling of hide and seek in the sense of, we're in the profane, we're running around, everything's crazy. And then we have the sacred space session, right, on Sundays.
Yeah.
As an example. And, we get all these lovely emails. I love getting these emails. Thank you for sending them, everyone. When you're like, this is like bringing me through the pandemic. This is like the best part of my week. And it's fantastic. Thank you. And we love it too, so we're all creating this potluck of a feast together, and we're all gorging on it, right? So it's lovely.
Yeah.
But it is this feeling of like, I get this time in sacred space to zoom out to the 30,000 foot level and say, oh, it's all hide and seek, it's all circumambulation. I feel better. And in some sense, I feel so good that I'm, in many cases, ready to like jump back in the fray again.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, you're like running hard, and then you stop and you're like relaxing, you recover, and then you stretch. And then, like you said, well, you're fine. You don't need to do anything, but you're like, okay, when's the next race? You go, you line up, and you like, you go again.
Yeah.
And the back and forth is fun. The hide and seek is fun.
Yeah.
And all of reality, right, you can say at this level, is hide and seek. I mean, you can even pull it to like, all of field theory is everything is a wave. All of the digital world is basically hide and seek. Everything's 1 and 0, right, over and over again in different patterns. But it's basically hide and seek. And even life itself is hide and seek, right? One moment I'm here, I'm born, and the next moment I'm not. And yet the underlying one thing that is reality that we talk about in the Tao Te Ching talk from a few months ago is unchanged, right? There's this thing that I say sometimes where it's like, and I don't explain it, but I think now if I just say it and don't explain it, you'll get more of the flavor of it, which is that all things end except for one. When you realize this one, you will become free. Or rather, you already are free, right? But it's like this fun touching of the sacred to realize this one and sit in it and just, enjoy the aroma of it. And then you get bored, and then you jump back into the world of things that end, right? Back into the world of hide and seek. Even in the Christian tradition, right? In Genesis 1, in the beginning was the Word. And it's like, actually, no, not in the beginning was not Word. In the beginning was God, the one in that system, the one who spoke the Word, right? And there's this question of like, why is creation even existing, right? If there's nothingness or just one thing, why does it get chopped up into many things? And there are many schools of thought which basically say, the world is a form of play, right? The lila. And the reason we're playing is because there's actually only one thing. And it's boring. Right? Or like the Christian sort of bad version, which is, the devil makes work for idle hands. And it's like, well, yeah, because my hands are idle and I'm bored.
Yeah.
So we naturally get into trouble. We naturally get into all kinds of spaghetti tangles. And there is something about like operating at this very high level, which allows you to see the spaghetti tangles of the hide and seek. And even as you see it, to willingly go into it and participate, which is what this hunter is doing.
Yeah.
You know.
And
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So this is one of the powerful things that I felt, where, you know, about the whole perspective of hide and seek. And the other thing that you said about hide and seek is, when you play this game, when you go into it, you go into the labyrinth thinking that you're going in to seek this thing. Your partner basically was hiding, and that's what you're seeking. But then you end up finding things that you didn't expect to see, you didn't even know existed, like the feathered robe. The daughter didn't even know that it was a thing, and she found it, right? And similarly, the hunter, he went in looking for ducks. He didn't even know Swan Maidens were a thing, and then he discovered them. So it's another of that, interpretation, and to look at it that way is so amazingly relaxing, at least for me, because that thing that you find without expectation, without knowing that this is what you're going to find, is actually so much more precious. And that thing actually triggers a chain of events that transforms your being into the next level. Basically, wherever you are, you there's a trigger that transforms you or puts you into the transformation process to go into the next level. So it's so unexpected, and you don't know. Yeah, and that's so powerful to know, because then it motivates me to go into the forest and kind of, play this hide and seek, with the knowledge that it's okay for me to not know what I'm going in there for. Again, the aspect of having to be in control kind of falls away, because you don't have to be in control. You don't have to know what you're going to find. It's fine not to know. And in fact, that's where the power lies, in not knowing. And this feeling, go ahead. because I always think of this as, I'm not smart enough to figure out what's best for me most of the time. So it's good for me to know that there is something unexpected to discover, and that's fine, and it's okay.
Right. Yeah. But also, just to like pull back even more, there's this feeling of like, if you don't want to go into the forest because it's scary.
Yeah.
And your whole life, people have told you with wagging profane finger, fear, threat, and control, don't go into the forest.
Yeah.
Or don't talk about that. Don't think about that. Just carry on the straight and narrow, do your job, pay your taxes, and don't think about all this other stuff, right? If you choose to continue doing that and you don't go into the forest, that itself is a form of hide and seek.
Right.
You're like hiding from the forest, or you're hiding the forest from you.
Yeah.
But and that's okay. You're kind of playing this meta game of hide and seek. But of course, as with every game of hide and seek, especially cosmic forms of the game of hide and seek, the things that you're hiding from always end up finding you anyway. Because it's like what we say when we talk about, the Frog King, the Princess and the Frog. It's like, the only thing you can't really do is run, because where are you going to run, right? The frog is inside you. The frog is a part of you.
Yeah.
Like, how am I going to hide from my liver? It's like right there, right? So even when you're trying to escape all this because you think it's punishment, even that is this meta form of hide and seek. And, that's okay. And so you're saying everything is okay. I can screw up. I can do all this stuff and it's okay. It's like, well, yeah. Especially in the realm of the sacred. Yeah. Right. Yeah. You may not make money or prestige, right? But those are concerns of the profane. And when we go back into the profane, we worry about that. But in the sacred, from this like 50,000 foot level, it's like it doesn't actually matter, right? There is no fear, threat, control. And almost going back and forth from sacred and profane is also a form of hide and seek, which you spend too much time in one, you start to long for the other, right? And that is the beauty of the hide and seek circumambulation of life.
Yeah.
Like it never gets old.
Yeah.
Right? It never gets old. It's like your lungs constantly blow and create the world like a bellows.
Yeah.
You eat, you can't look at food, another like morsel of food because you've eaten so much, and then half a day goes by and you're hungry again.
Yeah.
And that can be seen as a punishment, or it can be seen as this like delight, because like existence is this cyclical thing, and it like, it never ends. It never ends.
So I have this one last question, I think, before you want to share your exercise for the week.
Okay.
So when I was listening to you talking about navigating through all three realms, the realm of the beasts and the realm of the birds and the realm of the fishes in the story, and how the hunter goes to each of them to ask his question and to find what he needs to find. So typically, mythopoetic symbols, beasts represent, animals represent the body, and the birds represent, the sky realm represents the spirit, and fishes represent emotion, feeling, and insight through these things, right? So that's how I kind of read those. So I was wondering how navigating all three realms in this whole labyrinthine quest that we have, how does that look in regular life? What does it look like to be comfortable in all these three realms?
I mean, it's similar to, you could say a similar thing about the sacred and profane, as you would treat it as two realms, not three.
Yeah.
But in the three realm motif, it would be, I'm comfortable in my body, the beast realm. I'm comfortable in the intellectual realm, right? Talking about rarefied, chakras and, sort of the velocity of money and central banking and all of these things, sort of literature and Russian novelists and everything. I'm comfortable with that. But also when emotional insights come up, when whales come up out of the sea, grab me and take me down into the belly of the beast, into the dark forest. Well, it's terrifying. I'm screaming, right? But there's this other part of me where I know I'm screaming like I'm on a roller coaster, right? Where it's like I'm screaming, but there's a little bit of a hint in the back of my mind where I still remember that, I'm screaming because I'm on a roller coaster, and I paid, these days I paid a lot of money to pay for the masks and hand sanitizer to be here on this freaking roller coaster, about to throw up like the popcorn I just ate. Like I somehow paid for all this. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And so there's this feeling of comfort across all three realms. And so in that instance, even though I know I paid for it, I don't say, well, you should just suffer and stuff down the feeling that you're about to throw up. It's like, no, I'm also comfortable in my body. And if I really need to throw up and start crying, I just throw up and start crying.
Right.
Right. And someone will be like, well, didn't you pay to do that? It's like, yeah. Did you finish the popcorn? You're going to eat the rest of that? Pass it over. And everyone's rolling their eyes, right? Yeah. And then you can still have a conversation about the physics of like, shear factors on the roller coaster. Yeah. So it's this feeling of like, as you play hide and seek and circumambulate, you will end up going up and down through the three realms. Right. Right. And as you go through this roller coaster through the three realms, you will be experiencing everything fully. And at the same time, there will be a part of you going like, hooray, you know, hooray, life is beautiful. And in another sense, it's like, what is the actual feeling of it? The actual feeling of it is you go through life and you kind of just have this like sense of humor about it all. It's this sense of human-heartedness. Human-heartedness. You know, there's a word in Chinese, run, which is like a double this and then a man, right? Or actually, no, it's a double this and then two, with a sky, right? And the feeling is of like this double human, and the word run means compassion, right? I mean, the English translation is compassion, but the real meaning of run is like, you know, it's human-heartedness. It's like, oh, we're two people sitting here over a pot of tea, and you know, there's good and evil in both of us. There's like nobility and rascality in both of us, and it's like, you know, we're just humans. You know, ha ha ha, we're just humans. Even as I say that, I'm hanging onto my wallet because I'm like, I'm watching you, right? Because I don't want you to cheat me in the profane. But at the same time, there's this higher level where it's like, well, you know, even though I'm watching you, you probably have your like, you know, your associate in the back ready to like mug me when I go to the bathroom. And it's like, ha ha ha, you know, I know that. But then when it actually happens, I'm in a rage and I'm crying and everything. And it's just this like this feeling of sucking the marrow out of, you know, the drama of life, and having this bit of kind of this sense of humor about it all, you know, and enjoyment, even the parts that are scary, even the parts that are scary.
It's fantastic. Do you want to share the exercise for the week?
The exercise is kind of I do.
Right.
So the exercise actually kind of relates to this idea. And so the thought I had on the exercise was that, you know, so we're talking about all this where it's all very meta and it's wonderful. And there's a sense of, there's this very high level. And at the very high level, there's a sense of like everything's actually okay. Right. And some people out there will be like, oh, okay, so I don't have to worry. And you would be right. You would be right. And others out there will be like, ah ha ha, it's all fine for you, Artie, and you, Gary, to say we don't have to worry. But I'm certainly not at this rarefied level. How do I get to this rarefied level? How do I get to this rarefied level? Okay. Because there's this feeling of like, once you get to this level, everything is fine. He goes through like, he plays this perfect round of golf almost, right? Through 3 rounds of hide and seek, everything goes well. He finally gets to meet his father-in-law, the king of the swans, right? And passes even the final test swimmingly.
Yeah.
So once you get to the level, everything's kind of on autopilot. You'll just know what to do. So I don't need to give you any pointers once you're at this level. You know what to do. So I thought for the exercise, the interesting question would be, how do you actually get to this level?
Right.
How do you actually get to this level? Right. And we can say, well, you're already at this level. The sacred is already within you, but, you know, it's just a matter of how much attention. And, you know, I've been doing this so I know people will say in retreat, they'll be like, yeah, that's fine. But how? How do I actually do it? Tell me what to do now.
Yeah.
And if you continue just telling me I already have it, well then, you know, Artie, I want my money back. So I have to tell you something. And so the secret for me comes right at the beginning of the story, which is this perfect hero. Where we find him at the beginning of the story is the secret key to it all. We find him in the deep, dark forest at night. It's not even the scary place. It's the scary place friggin' at night. not looking for anything, not in a panic, not questing for anything. He's just there, like with his duck call, hunting ducks for his dinner this week.
Yeah.
And that to me just says it all. So the exercise is, because if you, so the key is this: if and when you get to the point of comfort with your own self and all the unexplored realms within you, where you can be willingly hanging out in your own inner deep dark forest at night and not even looking for anything. I mean, getting your standard nourishment, but he's like, he does this all the time, so he knows he'll bag something, right? No fear, nothing. That will be the key. And in many ways, the point of healing, bliss, all these things, you can't get to these places until you go through the dungeon. And what else is in the deep dark forest? All these things you didn't know existed. It seems like it's a regular occurrence that these swan, these otherworldly things that boggle the imagination will show up out of nowhere when you're hanging out in the deep dark forest. They won't come out of the forest into the village to harass you unless it's a really exceptional case of this is an emergency, we need to come out and get you because you've been avoiding us for 30 years and we have no other choice, right?
Yeah.
But the ideal is that, as uncontrollable and unpredictable and frankly dangerous as it is, you go in anyway, because like Neverwash from last, you spent 14 years in this state.
Yeah.
And you and the little devil are like the closest of blood brothers, because it's like you talk to each other all the time, because in the forest, there's nobody else to talk to. There's just this little devil hanging out with you, or the tiger from the other story.
Yeah.
Right? The tiger's feeding you. The tiger's bringing you brides.
Yeah.
So you're very comfortable with being in the dark forest of your own inner self for no good reason. Go and you hang out in the basement, not because you're looking for something in the freezer or trying to turn the heat back on. You go down and hang out in the basement because you just like being in the basement. You just like it.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks you're crazy. I just like it.
Yeah.
And at that point is where all of this additional magic happens.
Yeah.
That is not even required. It's not even curative. He starts the story with no problem.
Yeah.
It's not, he's childless. He's not looking for a bride. He's not starving, looking out. He's not even like in the last story, Neverwash. He's just got discharged from 3 wars. He doesn't even have an adult egg. So he's like down and out on his luck. This guy's just fine. And you find him hanging out in the forest anyway.
Yeah.
And all of the upside next level, which he doesn't even need, but he does anyway, because that's just how he rolls.
Yeah.
So the exercise then is to sit quietly with some pen and paper in your car when you've parked for like 5 or 10 minutes, or when you're alone at home, is to ask yourself, what is your deep, dark forest within you? Right? Not theoretically, not mythopoetically, but actually in your body. What in your body, in your past history, in your life, is the place of fear?
Yeah.
The place you avoid to go. The place you avoid so much you don't even admit there's a forest in there. Is it cool? What, that? No, that's not a thing. I want you to go there. No, I mean, I would go there if it was a thing, but it's not even a thing. I never worry about that. Ever.
Yeah.
Right? I absolutely never worry about that. It's the absolutely that gives you away. So what is your place of fear? What is your place of pain? What is the place where if I went there, I don't know if I would come back? if we open that can of worms, I don't even know. I don't even know. Now, I'm not telling you to go there. Right? You do whatever you're comfortable with. Or you're like, I need, family therapists around me ready to like stick me with a needle or give me a pill. That's fine. I mean, everyone's different, right? Everyone's deep, dark forest is of a different nature. So I'm not telling you to go there. But if you're wondering, how do I get to this level? It's like, well, the thing that the story, the archetype is showing us is that we are comfortable to the point where we're just hanging out in this deepest, scariest part of ourselves. And we've spent so much time there that we've like made friends with all the locals, the little devils running around, the gnomes. We know everybody. And we're comfortable there. And there's even this whole vastness of the darkness, because it is the deep dark forest at night, where random stuff will still come out and it'll terrify even the devil. It'll terrify even like, this crew, this motley crew of misfits that I've gotten to know.
Yeah.
Right. But at least we have each other, and we're not looking for trouble, but we're not looking for trouble, but we're not staying away from this deep, dark forest part of ourselves. And the reason we're not is because this is a part of me too.
Yeah.
This is a part of me too. And I claim it. Right? If I have a dog or a cat or a child that's like, doing all these things, that's like completely mortifying, embarrassing, my child goes and like, steps on the foot of the queen herself, right? It's like, yeah, I'm not going to disown that child. I'm going to raise my hand and say, yeah, that's my child. I apologize. I'll like pay for your shoe. I'll never be invited back again. That's fine. But I'm not leaving without my child, right? This is my child. He or she is a mess, and I claim her. I claim her without condition. So the question is, what is your deep, dark forest within you? What is your place of fear? What is your place of pain? Your place of grief? Your place of avoidance? And are you comfortable just sitting there for no reason? You don't have to be. This is sacred space. There's no fear, threat, or control. You don't have to be. But the exercise, the thought experiment is like, what is that place? And are you comfortable being there? And if you're not, why not? And if you look at the place from a distance, you're like looking at the forest through binoculars from the castle tower, right? During the day. And you're like, what would it take for me to be comfortable getting close to it, or even going into it more and sitting there more? Now, again, you don't have to. The whole point of this is like an advanced kind of archetypal diorama motif. You could live your whole life and not do this and be just fine. Win the Nobel Prize, cure cancer, save humanity, and not go here, just fine. There is no reason to go here. There's nothing needed in the realm of the profane that requires you to go. You can get into Harvard and do all this stuff without doing this. Right? So there's no fear, threat, or control. There's not even a lure of like higher spiritual whatever. That having been said, this is a place, and this is a place within you. This is a child of yours, and you choose what you want to do. That's it. That's my exercise.
That's amazing. I don't know if I'll have the courage to attempt it this week, but it definitely makes me agree. Yeah.
I just put it up because you picked the story. It's your fault, not mine.
I know. Right. Thank you, Artie, for that. Thank you. And I'll just go in the background when we close the session. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll close the session. All right. Okay. So thanks, everyone. I hope you found that to be interesting. And that's the exercise. So now I'll close the session. Our next session is this Sunday. It's free. It's open. Please invite others. There's a green box in the Crowdcast thing where you can hit it. So you can sign up right now for next week's session. In the Facebook Live, the text of the post should have the link to sign up for next week's session if you want, only if you want. And so with that, I'll go ahead and close our session for this week. So I hereby close this session of our shared sacred space. Thank you for holding this space with me and with us. And thank you for sharing the nourishment, the spiritual nourishment, and the emotional nourishment of this shared sacred space with us. I give you my blessing. Go in peace, bestowed with blessing, free of fear, free of threat, and free of the undue control of others. Have a great day, have a great week, and I will see you all in the next session. Thank you. Thank you.